You open your laptop tomorrow morning to check your email, and there's a message waiting from your company. Not from your manager, not from HR, from a system. Your role, along with every other role in the company, has been fully automated, effective immediately. You're not being fired exactly, you're being replaced, and so is everyone else. Every job on the planet gone in a single night. What actually happens next? The first minute would feel unreal. The first hour would feel like a bad joke someone forgot to end. By the end of the first day, the full weight of it would start to sink in. Work, the thing that structured your mornings, paid your bills, and quietly defined who you were to strangers at parties, would simply stop existing. Not slow down, stop. This isn't a new fear. Economist John Maynard Keynes wrote an essay back in 1930 called Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren, and in it, he predicted that machines would eventually make most human labor unnecessary. He imagined a future where people worked just a few hours a week, filling the rest of their time with leisure, art, and connection. Almost a century later, we're still working full weeks, still commuting, still clocking in. So what happens if the moment Keynes predicted actually arrives, but arrives all at once everywhere overnight? The initial shock would be economic before it's anything else. Paychecks would stop, every paycheck everywhere at the same time. Within days, the practical questions would pile up fast. Who pays the rent? Who stocks the grocery stores? Who keeps the electricity running if the people who used to maintain the grid have been replaced too? For a system built entirely on people trading labor for money, and money for survival, removing labor from that equation doesn't just eliminate jobs. It eliminates the mechanism the entire economy runs on. Researchers have actually tried to measure how close we already are to this. Economists Carl Benedict Frey and Michael Osborne at Oxford published a widely cited study back in 2013, estimating that a significant share of jobs in the United States were at high risk of automation in the coming decades. Their research didn't predict every job disappearing overnight. It predicted a slow, uneven wave, some jobs going first, others lasting much longer. But their underlying math still applies here. If you take that slow wave and compress it into a single night, the disruption isn't gradual anymore, it's total. So who would actually be affected first, and who might last a little longer in the chaos? Jobs built around repetitive, predictable tasks would be the easiest to replace completely. Data entry, basic customer service, routine analysis, simple manufacturing. But in this scenario, even jobs we think of as safely human, teaching, therapy, skilled trades, creative work, are gone too, because the premise here isn't partial automation. It's total replacement. Every job, which raises an uncomfortable question. If AI could genuinely do every job perfectly, would you even want the jobs it couldn't take back? MIT economist Eric Brynjolfsson has spent years studying what he calls the productivity paradox. The strange pattern where new technology often takes far longer than expected to actually show up in economic growth, because society needs time to reorganize around it. Factories didn't become dramatically more productive the moment electricity arrived. It took decades of redesigning workflows, buildings, and entire industries around what electricity made possible. If total AI automation happened overnight, society wouldn't have decades to adjust. It would have to reorganize everything, essentially instantly, with no blueprint for what comes next. And that reorganization wouldn't just be economic. It would be personal in ways that might hit harder than the financial panic. For a lot of people, work isn't just a paycheck. It's identity. Ask someone what they do, and they'll usually answer with a job title, not a list of hobbies. Psychologists have long studied how deeply tied self-worth becomes to occupation, especially in cultures that treat productivity as a kind of moral virtue. Take away every job simultaneously, and you don't just take away income. You take away the answer millions of people give when asked who they are. Would you know how to describe yourself to a stranger without mentioning what you do for a living? There's a strange kind of grief hidden in that question. Grief for a schedule. Grief for the small rituals of a workday, the commute, the coffee break, the sense of forward motion that comes from finishing a task and starting another one. Even people who complained about their jobs every single day might find themselves missing the structure the very next morning. Structure, it turns out, is its own kind of comfort, even when the thing structuring your day isn't particularly enjoyable. Meanwhile, governments would be forced into decisions overnight that economists have debated for years without urgency. Universal basic income, once treated as a fringe idea mostly discussed in academic papers and small pilot programs, would suddenly become the only realistic option on the table. If no one can work for money and everyone still needs to eat, some kind of direct payment system becomes less of a political preference and more of a basic requirement for keeping society functioning. But who decides how much? Who decides whether everyone gets the same amount or whether some people, based on need, get more? These aren't small logistical questions. They're the entire architecture of a new kind of society, and someone would have to design it in days, not decades. There's also a version of this story that isn't purely bleak. Author and economist Daniel Susskind, who has written extensively about the future of work, has argued that the real challenge of an automated future isn't finding people something to do. It's figuring out how to distribute the abundance that automation creates. If machines can produce food, build homes, deliver healthcare, and manage logistics without human labor, the raw materials for a comfortable life might actually become more abundant, not less. The problem isn't scarcity, it's distribution. Would a world with enough for everyone still find a way to leave people behind, simply because the old system for deciding who gets what has disappeared along with the jobs? Consider what a day might actually look like a few months into this new world, once the initial panic settled and some kind of basic income system had been hastily assembled. You'd wake up with no calendar of meetings, no inbox to clear. For some people, this would feel like the freedom Keynes imagined nearly a century ago: endless time for art, learning, relationships, rest. For others, that same empty calendar would feel less like freedom and more like a void, an entire day with nothing pulling you forward, nothing waiting to be finished. Two people could wake up to the exact same circumstances and experience two completely different emotional realities. What would determine which one you'd become? Some clues might come from people who have already lived through smaller versions of this shock. Retirees who left demanding careers and struggled to adjust. Lottery winners who quit their jobs and found the empty time harder to fill than expected. Communities hit by sudden factory closures who lost not just income but a shared daily rhythm. In almost every case, the people who adjusted best weren't the ones who simply relaxed. They were the ones who found new structures to replace the old ones, new projects, new communities, new reasons to get up in the morning that had nothing to do with a paycheck. Maybe that's the actual test hidden inside the scenario. Not whether the economy could survive losing every job overnight, though that alone would require rebuilding almost everything from scratch. The deeper test is whether you could survive losing the thing that used to answer the question of what you're for. Because work was never only about money. It was about contribution, about being needed, about proving to yourself in small daily increments that you mattered to something larger than your own existence. Machines can replace the tasks. It's much less certain whether anything can quickly replace that feeling. So if you opened your laptop tomorrow and found that message waiting, the automation itself might turn out to be the easy part. Cash payments can be designed. Supply chains can be rebuilt by systems smart enough to manage themselves. The harder question is what you'd choose to build your days around once nothing required you to show up. Would you finally start the project you always said you didn't have time for? Would you spend more time with the people you've been too tired to call? Or would the sudden freedom feel less like liberation and more like standing in a room with every wall removed, nothing to lean against, nothing to hold you up? You open your laptop tomorrow morning and the message is waiting. Every job on the planet replaced overnight. But maybe the real question was never whether the machines could do your job, it's whether you'd know who you were once they did.